In local matters, voters in Florida will head to the polls tomorrow to vote in the state's primary races. Polls open less than 48 hours after a shooting rampage at a video game competition in Jacksonville that left 2 people dead and 11 injured. It is the latest in a string of deadly shootings in the state and an issue at the forefront of this year's midterm races. So joining me now is David Smiley. He's a political reporter for the Miami Herald. So let's talk a little bit about that, David. As I mentioned, this primary follows this deadly mass shooting in Jacksonville that everyone's talking about. It's 2 weeks since the students at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School returned to that school after a horrible shooting in February earlier. I guess that gun control would be sort of at the top of the debate, I'm assuming.
Yeah, this shooting in Jacksonville has definitely thrust gun control and gun violence back to the forefront of politics in Florida, and in particular the campaign for governor. We have pretty much all the 5 major candidates for the Democrats have announced that they are going to Jacksonville to hold press conferences and make statements on the shooting. The 2 Republican candidates have canceled events in Jacksonville. So, you see the difference there in the 2 parties. I think the one key thing to mention, though, is that this is a primary election. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that the shooting is going to change who people are voting for or the outcome of the primaries. All 5 Democrats are basically on the same page in terms of gun control, and the 2 Republicans are essentially on the same page on the same topic. So there's not a lot to differentiate voters in terms of who they're going to vote for, but maybe it does stoke people to come out to the polls who weren't otherwise going to vote because now they're angry and they have an issue that's urging them to get out and cast their ballot. So
then do you think the issue will have an impact come November?
Yeah, I think we're destined to have gun control being a prominent issue on the general election campaign. One of the really sad realities of the situation is I think there's a legitimate question as to whether we'll have another shooting between now and November, because it's not really so much a question of if there will be one, but when. And so I think we can all hope that there won't be one, but it's sort of holding our breath. And we definitely will have the Parkland students will still be out there. Their parents will still be out there campaigning. We have Parkland parents who have endorsed a candidate for the Democrats who might be on the ballot in November. And I think it's likely that if Philip Levine, who is the candidate that's been endorsed, if he's not on the ballot, then chances are good that they may endorse whoever is and be out there campaigning front and center for the Democratic Party.
So let's talk about that, the race to replace Governor Scott and who the Democrats are pushing forward. There are a lot of Democrats vying to get the nomination. Who's pulling out ahead?
Signs still, I think, are pretty good for Gwen Graham, the daughter of former Governor Bob Graham, former U.S. Senator Bob Graham. She has kind of done the tortoise campaign, keep her head down, just sort of focus on her policy, her voters, and just try to get through the primary polls. There have been a number of different polls showing different front runners, really different runner-ups so far in second and third. Andrew Gillum's campaign, the mayor of Tallahassee, the only African-American candidate on the ballot, his campaign says he's surging, that they have evidence that a pretty big ground game is pushing him to the finish line. He's had money from billionaires George Soros and Tom Steyer helping him along. We have the former mayor of Miami Beach, Philip Levine, who also, I think, has a shot to win the nomination. He's put in a lot of his own money. He also has invested a lot in field staff, in having offices all around the state. And then we also have Palm Beach billionaire Jeff Green, who recently didn't pull all his ads off TV, but kind of, I think, seemed to wave a bit of a white flag when a lot of his ads came down. He'd been running TV commercials steadily, spending about $40 million or so from the time he got in June. And I think the fact that he's pulling back on that and now saying he's going to shift into a ground game seems to be maybe a little bit of spin. We also have Chris King of Winter Park, businessman who's been polling in the pretty low single digits. So that's sort of the field as we see it right now. And I think, it's still kind of anybody's game, but I think the Graham campaign still has reason to feel pretty confident that it's going to be them come Wednesday.
What about the president? Is he going to play a role, and what sort of impact do you think he could have if he starts to wade into the politics down there in Florida, which he probably will?
Yeah, absolutely. Nothing seems to turn out Democratic voters right now, like Donald Trump campaigning against Donald Trump, the anti-Trump, the Trump fighter. The Democrats are running commercials and campaigning on one theme or another in that area. And then you also have to consider the idea that the likely Republican nominee, Congressman Ron DeSantis, is endorsed by Trump. Trump was in Tampa on the last day of July holding a rally for DeSantis. And you have to wonder, while on one hand, Trump is still pretty popular with Republican voters in Florida, given that Paul Manafort, his former campaign chairman, just was convicted on some tax-related charges last week. And around the same time, you have Trump's former attorney, Michael Cohen, pleading guilty and sort of fingering his boss as saying that he ordered secret payments to pay off women alleging infidelities. You have to wonder how volatile a situation that's going to be for the Republican Party heading into November. It seems like maybe they sink or swim with the president.
Before I let you go, David, I want to ask you about Florida's 27th Congressional District. Can you walk us through that race? I have relatives that live in that district.
Well, you have, you have Ileana Ros-Lehtinen retiring. She is the first Latina elected to Congress, a widely revered and highly regarded Congresswoman, even among people who disagree with her politics. She's a Republican. She is retiring and leaving that seat open. She has held it for a very long time, but the district in 2016 voted for Clinton over Trump by about 20 points. So Democrats feel really good that they are going to take that seat and flip it blue in November. And right now, it looks like Donna Shalala, the former president of the University of Miami, will probably be their nominee, although she's getting a run for her money from State Representative David Richardson, the first elected openly gay lawmaker in the state of Florida. On the Republican side, probably they nominate Maria Elvira Salazar, a former TV journalist and anchor, which is going to be interesting to have a candidate for that party trying to hold an important seat as a reporter, right? Given the theme of sort of don't trust the media, which we're seeing being used to attack her in that race. So it should make up for a really interesting general election if those are the two nominees. Maria Elvira Salazar speaks Spanish. She's a Hispanic woman. Donna Shalala is a woman, but she does not speak Spanish. And so there's an interesting dynamic in terms of a majority Hispanic district that elected the first Latina to Congress. Will they get behind someone who is not Hispanic?
Well, David Smiley, I can tell you're going to be very busy, so thank you so much for giving us some time.
Thanks for having me.
And tomorrow night, be sure to watch Red and Blue starting at 5 p.m. Eastern. We will have special coverage and analysis throughout the evening. That's right here on CBSN.